Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Green Bay Packers all-time leader in rushing, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Wanted to go live a little bit earlier this morning. Got some errands to run, and we want to be around in the afternoon in case some kind of news breaks. I expect the Green Bay Packers will have more job interviews set up for the defensive coordinator position, that void now that Jeff Hafley is officially the Miami Dolphins head coach. So what we're going to dive into this morning, a little bit of breaking news. It came out a little later yesterday that the Packers have scheduled their first interview with their first defensive coordinator candidate. It's a familiar face. We will talk about who that is. We'll talk about all the details of his career. We'll also talk about what his most recent defense did in terms of deployment. You know, did they play the majority cover 2, cover 6, all the schematics involved with that. And we'll see if it might be a potential fit for the Packers. The fact that this is the second time he's interviewed for the defensive coordinator spot, I think it was back in I want to say the Jeff Hafley hire. He had interviewed back then as well. So we'll talk about Christian Parker. Also, on the backside of the show, we're going to talk about Aaron Banks, all right? Cut or keep. Big cap hit on Aaron Banks, $24.8 million. We'll talk about how much money you could save with a pre-June 1 cut and a post-June 1 cut, and what it may, the effects it may have on the offensive line in that regards. Before we get into everything, if you would do that YouTube stuff for me, hit like, hit subscribe, click the bell icon. If this is your first time tuning into PTA, welcome. Thank you for making us a part of your morning. We're not experts. We're not insiders. We're not media members. We're fans just like you, talking Packers on a daily basis. So if you're looking for that type of content, make sure you hit like, subscribe. And when you click that bell icon, you'll get notified right to your phone when we go live with breaking news at any point. I see we already got people in the chat in here. Ari Ironminer, what's up, buddy? We got our boy Chris in here, says, wait, what? And Jake G126, everybody's wondering, like, you've been going live at 9 a.m., Clayton. What's going on? Again, got everything ready early, was up on my second cup of coffee. Man, let's get in here and talk ball. Let's get in here and break it down. By the time we do this show, there may be another interview set up, and we got to start getting ready to cover all that as well. So let's dive into it. First things first, let's talk about this defensive coordinator interview, if you will. And obviously, we're talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Christian Parker. All right. So Christian Parker has not been one of my favorite candidates. You guys know I've talked about, I think everybody wants Brian Flores. Now, is it realistic? Probably not, right? He'll probably end up getting a head coaching job or go back to Minnesota. But he is technically a free agent, so the Packers could open up the checkbook if they want to. But Christian Parker is one that he was very young the last time they interviewed for him, right? Yeah, that was one thing that stood out to me. He was mentioned as an up and coming assistant coach, if you will. He's a guy who already spent time in Green Bay. You could tell that Matt LaFleur has an admiration for him. And then he went on to the Eagles after the Packers decided to hire Jeff Hafley. So he's been with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I didn't mention Christian Parker on our list of 15 yesterday because I really, really, really wanted to zero in on the top 3 defenses in the league. Philadelphia Eagles defense is not bad. They are a solid defense this year, okay? What I wanted to do was kind of key in on the top 3, and now you're going to see some of these other candidates that are going to get interviewed, right, that are probably outside of that top 3. In some cases, maybe outside of the top 10, and it's easy to go, okay, why would you go after a coach like that? Well, we kind of felt the same way about Jeff Hafley. You look at Jeff Hafley's number at Boston College, and the defense was just meh, right? You go back to when he was in the National Football League, he was with the 49ers, but he had never been a defensive coordinator, right? He had never called plays at the NFL level. The only play calling experience that we seen was he was co-defensive coordinator at Ohio State one year, and there were rumors out there that he actually called the plays and the other defensive coordinator had other responsibilities. So, when you hear someone like Christian Parker that might potentially be the next DC, it's easy to get a little bit like, okay, why are we hiring this guy? But everyone felt the same way about Jeff Hafley. Great mind. People like Richard Sherman loved Jeff Hafley, right? They thought he could be a great coach. But I don't think anybody was coming into that hiring cycle going, Jeff Hafley's my number one choice, until it was mentioned he was interviewed, and all of a sudden, bang, they had their guy. And it felt like the Packers moved pretty quick on Jeff Hafley. So let's dive into it. To the best of my knowledge, Jordan Schultz broke the report. If you guys know someone who got it earlier, mention it in the chat. I don't want to cut anybody out of getting credit for reporting on the news. We always have 73 insiders reporting the same thing within 30 seconds of each other. But Jordan Schultz, sources, the Packers will interview Eagles DB coach and pass game coordinator, very important there, Christian Parker, for their vacant defensive coordinator job after Jeff Hafley took the Dolphins head coaching position. Parker, a rising star in the coaching ranks, flies to Dallas tomorrow to interview with the Cowboys. Okay, so he is going to be interviewing with the Cowboys today. Some people are going, there's no chance the Packers will get him. They won't let him out of the building in Dallas. I don't know, man. They've already, it's funny, when Dallas interviewed DeMarcus Covington or set that interview up, whether it's already taken place or not, people said the same thing there. Oh, now we lost DeMarcus Covington. Just because they interview doesn't mean they're going to get hired. And I can't imagine Christian Parker, unless they just absolutely blow his socks off with the compensation, right? I can't imagine he wouldn't want to explore all options, right, and get the interview out there. So, again, that is the latest news. Jordan Schultz reporting that he is, does have an interview set up with the Packers after the Dallas Cowboys interview. Now, let's talk about his background, okay? I like to go back and see, okay, did these guys play football and at what level? I think that's important, right? You want someone who's played the game, if at all possible. It's not a 100% a prerequisite for getting a coaching position, but I think it does help that you can connect with the players a little bit more. Now, he never played in the NFL, but here was his playing career, okay? From 2009 to 2012, Parker played his college football at the University of Richmond, okay? That was from 2009 to 2012. He played wide receiver and cornerback. I think that's important, you want your passing game coordinator or your pass-minded defensive coordinator, if he ends up getting the job, you want him to know what it takes to play cornerback, to play safety, positions like that. But also, if you played wide receiver at any point during your, whether it's a small career, short career, or a long career, you know what the receivers are trying to accomplish. So you can kind of reverse engineer that. I think it's important to have both receiver and cornerback experience. Same thing goes with a DB coach or a DB-minded coach that maybe played defensive line or vice versa. Like DeMarcus Covington, to the best of my knowledge, he was our defensive line coach, right? To the best of my knowledge, he played wide receiver in his playing career. And then he's a defensive line coach. So just because you played one position doesn't make you more qualified or less qualified than the other. In some cases, I think it kind of gets you into the mindset of, okay, he's a defensive line coach. Well, he knows as a background as a wide receiver what the receivers are trying to do to the DBs behind them. So how can you maximize what you're doing in the defensive line to help those guys on the backside with the wide receiver mindset? All that stuff kind of comes into play, if that makes sense. Highlights, he was a member of two Colonial Athletic Association championship teams in 2009 and 2012. So a little bit of success there. Background, he originally joined the Spiders as a walk-on before earning a scholarship. He also competed in track for the university, specifically in the 4x100 meter relay. All right. So fast track guy, obviously. And I love that it says that he joined them as a walk-on and then earned a scholarship, right? That's someone that had kind of the odds stacked against him. I think that's important. High school prior to college, he played at Battlefield High School in Virginia, where he was a two-time all-district selection at cornerback. So it sounds like he got selected for awards at cornerback as opposed to wide receiver. Let's talk about his coaching career, the more important aspect, right? From 2013 to 2018, okay, with his coaching career. Before moving to the NFL, Parker spent 6 seasons honing his craft at various collegiate levels. He was at Virginia State from 2013 through 2014. He began as a graduate assistant / cornerbacks coach before being promoted to secondary coach. So he went from just coaching the corners to coaching the corners and the safeties, and recruiting coordinator in his second year. So obviously he's got some recruiting experience. Norfolk State from 2015 to 2016, served as the defensive backs coach and recruiting coordinator there. Then he went to Notre Dame in 2017. That's a pretty big jump there from Norfolk State to Notre Dame, right? Served as the defensive analyst for the Fighting Irish team that finished the season 10-3. So this is probably where Matt LaFleur and Christian Parker have a little bit of common ground, maybe where they cross paths. They may not have been there at the same time, but obviously Matt LaFleur, I think he spent 1 or 2 years at Notre Dame, I believe under Brian Kelly. I could be wrong there, but I think so. That's probably the ties in that situation. Texas A&M in 2018, he served as the defensive analyst on Jimbo Fisher's inaugural staff as well. Now let's talk about him moving to the NFL. Christian Parker moves to the NFL. His NFL ascent has been remarkably rapid. Okay, and this is what you're looking for. We talk about, you're going to get a ton of draft coverage on the channel here in the coming weeks. Actually, the board will start being put together tonight at a different level. So we're going to update that for you guys, and you'll have updated grades in that regard. But we always talk about players, prospects, right, coming into the league. You want a player that's ascending into the league. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want a player that's shown progress every year in college and is playing his best ball coming in the league. It doesn't mean that if someone has a step back, you're not interested in him. Like Jaden Reed took a step back his final year in college. The year before, he was a stud, took a slight step back, and then he hits the league, the National Football League, rebounds, and he's off and running. So it's not like, okay, that's going to completely cancel someone out. But a best case scenario, or perfect scenario, in my opinion, is a player that just continues to improve on his way into the NFL. Same thing goes for coaches, right? So he's kind of made this rapid ascent as one of the youngest and most effective position coaches in the league. So he broke into the National Football League with the Green Bay Packers in 2019 and 2020. In his first NFL stint, he served as the defensive quality control coach under Mike Pettin. Okay, so Matt LaFleur comes in 2019, and you have our boy Christian Parker comes in as a defensive quality control coach under Mike Pettin. He notably worked with Jair Alexander during his 2020 All-Pro season. So you start to tie things together. Now, I understand different portions of the fan base looks at this different, right? What they'll do, like we mentioned Jim Leonard, man, look at what he did with that secondary in Denver. And a portion of the fan base will come at you and go, oh, he didn't do anything special. He's got Patrick Surtain. He didn't do anything there. If he didn't have Patrick Surtain, they wouldn't have been that good. Okay, cool. So he gets no credit for helping Patrick Surtain have an all-pro season, or actually, yeah, all-pro, and I think he won the AP Defensive Player of the Year award this year. He gets no credit for that. He had nothing to do. It's just like with Jordan Love. Fire Matt LaFleur. Well, he's got Jordan Love. Can somebody remind me who hand-molded Jordan Love into the quarterback that he is at the NFL level? Same thing with Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers. It's like we want to fire them and not give them any credit for the superstars they have when you actually seen that coach help that superstar peak, right? I don't know. I just think it's important to mention that stuff. So the fact that he worked with Jair Alexander in the 2020 All-Pro season, I think that's huge. He moved on to Denver in 2021. He served as the defensive backs coach. He mentored stars like Pat Surtain II and Justin Simmons. In 2022, his secondary helped the Broncos finish 7th in the league in yards allowed. So he's got some ties to Pat Surtain as well, or a little bit earlier, obviously, than Jim Leonard arriving there. And then most recently, the Philadelphia Eagles came calling, and in 2024, they hired him last year. He currently was the passing game coordinator and defensive backs coach. All right, Christian Parker helped lead the Eagles to a Super Bowl victory in February 2025. Under his guidance, the 2024 secondary finished with the league's fewest yards allowed per game and the top passing defense. So again, he's the passing game coordinator. Last year when they won the Super Bowl, he was the passing game coordinator. That's huge. That's absolutely huge. Now you're asking yourself, okay, so who does he work under there? It's Vic Fangio. Yeah, that name gets brought back up again. You guys remember the Fangio defense was all the rage, right? That's why we went and got Joe Barry to run the Fangio defense. And then things kind of shifted a little bit, and everybody caught on to the Fangio defense other than Vic Fangio. And now all of a sudden, the Fangio defense is back on the rise again, okay? The league is very cyclical, and I think people have a big misconception. Even when Joe Barry was here, Fangio is supposed to be quarters match, right? At its root. It doesn't mean you don't run other defenses. Well, what happened? By the time we were ready to run Joe Barry off, we had switched to middle field close the majority of the time, right? So it actually turned into a middle field close defense. That's not the Fangio defense. That's not a quarters match, cover 6 match, cover 9 match, cover set, all that. It's, again, you've got to evolve with the personnel you got and the direction the league's going, but it will come back around, right? That's why you're seeing more 12 and 21 personnel in the league now, because that's coming back around, because defense are building to stop 11 personnel. Well, now offenses are going, you know what? Let's force them in their base defense and let's attack that way. So let's talk about what the Eagles ranking looked like, and then we'll talk about what they specifically ran, okay? And we'll be real quick with this. I don't want to go too long with this segment. So Philadelphia Eagles defensive rankings, scoring, okay, their scoring defense, points per play allowed, they finished 4th in the league at 0.306. The only defenses ranked higher than them was Denver, Houston, and Seattle, okay? So, again, 4th in scoring defense. The Packers finished 10th. So, let's say all things are equal, and we know they're not, but just for conversation purposes, let's say all things are equal here. And okay, we're going to get the result that Philadelphia got because we bring in Christian Parker compared to what Jeff Hafley did this year. Well, we just improved to 4th. Now, will that happen? Probably not. Will it, will Green Bay or will Jeff Hafley go to Miami and have the 10th best defense? I wouldn't be surprised if he don't. Things change, right? You got to adjust on the fly. We know now, if you look at this second column number here with Green Bay scoring defense, the last 3 games of the season, they were actually at 0.409. That would put them in the bottom third if you were to compare that to the 2025 column, right? Now, Philadelphia, what did they do down the stretch? Their last 3 games, and this is of the regular season, mind you, they were 0.306 all season long. The last 3 games, they actually got slightly better at 0.304 points per play allowed. So they were improving. However, their last game, 0.397. So you can kind of see how, recently how they have performed. And again, it doesn't mean just because their last game was worse than both of their last 3 in their 2025 average, it doesn't mean that Christian Parker will be a horrible DC and that's going to continue that trend. No, you're constantly making adjustments. But again, overall 2025, Philadelphia finished 4th in scoring defense. Total defense, yards per play allowed, okay? So every time an offense runs a play, this is how many yards they typically give up on defense. Philadelphia finished 8th, actually tied for 7th, I apologize, with New England, who are obviously going to the AFC Championship here. 5 yards per play allowed, okay, is what they had. Green Bay, the same exact number. So you got a chance to maybe get a little bit better in scoring defense, stay the same total defensive yards per play. If Christian Parker can do what Vic Fangio's doing in Philadelphia. All right, passing defense, okay, yards per pass attempt allowed, they finished 9th. Green Bay, right there, the same exact number at 6.1 yards per pass attempt allowed. So you've got neck and neck right there, Philadelphia, Green Bay. And you can kind of see why I was digging through the coaching staff at Seattle, Denver, and Houston, right? Those are the top 3 defenses in every statistical category. It's wild, okay? Run defense. Well, how did they run? Okay, well, Clayton, he was a secondary coach. Does he really get credit? Do the safeties, remind me, do the safeties help play the run? Well, he's a passing game coordinator. That stuff has got to be completely lockstep together. The run game coordinator and the pass game coordinator have got to make sure that they're not playing too far off tilt to put themselves in a vulnerable spot, to put the offense in an advantageous situation because they don't understand, all right, we might not want to play quarters when they're firing the wheel, right? We may not want to play cover 6 if they're on the 2 side. They want to bring pressure off the 2 side, right? You got to make sure the run fits line up. You got to make sure everything is very, very cohesive in that regard. So, yeah, I do think it matters. So, Philly, again, in run defense, they finished tied for 11th with Green Bay at 4.2 yards per rush allowed on the season. Now, you notice down the stretch, Green Bay got really bad, 4.8 yards per rush allowed. But our run defense started to collapse as the injuries continued to pile up. And then Philadelphia's actually got better. On the year, 4.2. Their last 3 games, it improved to only 3.4. If you took that 3.4 and put it in the 2025 column over here, that would actually be a league best in terms of overall with 2025, if that makes sense. It doesn't mean that the last 3 for other teams like Houston, 3.1. New Orleans had a really good defense, surprisingly. So, all right, takeaways. This is an important stat. You won't find Green Bay on this list because I want to say we were right in the bottom 3 or bottom 5 in takeaways. It was horrible. We just could not take the football away, right? Philadelphia actually tied for 10th best in takeaways, all right? They were averaging 1.3 takeaways per game. So when you look at the other defenses, Houston was number 1 at 1.8. Jacksonville, our boy Anthony Campanelli, was at 1.8, so he was tied for first with Houston. Chicago was tied for third with 1.7 with Pittsburgh. And then you had the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. So you could kind of see some of those top defenses we were just talking about and where they rank. But again, Philadelphia, Christian Parker's crew, he was the passing game coordinator for Philadelphia once again. They were averaging 1.3 takeaways per game. Obviously, that's interceptions and that's forced fumbles, recovered fumbles, that type of thing. All right. So that's how that falls into place. Now, one last thing. What does their coverage scheme look like in Philadelphia? Predominantly, now, again, when you think about Vic Fangio, what do you think about, gang? You always think about quarters match, right? Again, quarters match is 4 deep with match principles, right? It's if and then. There's assignments on each individual call. If you look at it from Nick Saban's perspective in Alabama, they call it triangle and box, okay? And what that means is you always want to stay +1 in the hat count on your coverage. If it's a 2-receiver set on one side, you want to form a triangle around him, okay? And there's match principles involved at the break, at the stem, in a perfect world, a perfect scenario, you want to have him in between both receivers, in between 3 defenders, with someone looking to match him downfield, right? Like if it's a dub set in a 2x2 set, right? The safety in the corner, what they'll probably be is what we call mod, or there might be a little bit more advanced match coverage, where if they go vertical, if they break a threshold of 7 or 8 yards, then it now becomes man coverage. It might be a 12-yard threshold on a 3rd and long call, right? But what it means is if the 2 goes vert, the safety now becomes man coverage, right? That's kind of the root of the Fangio scheme. Now, let's see how much cover 4 they played here, all right? And let's see how much man coverage they played as well. And listen, understand, whoever's charting these numbers, they may not have it right? Like they may miss 1 or 2, but I think this is a good collection of data. So when you look at what the Eagles did this year, first of all, EPA per dropback, they were tied for 4th best in the league at negative 0.05 EPA per dropback. Where's Green Bay? Glad you asked. We actually finished this year a positive 0.12. So we were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10th worst pass defense in the league in terms of EPA per dropback. Not yards per pass attempt, EPA per dropback. All right. And again, I think it's an important metric. So the Eagles finishing tied for 4th. That's a nice number. What did they run? All right. What they ran, the majority of the time was a cover 3. So they were in 29% of their defensive plays. They played cover 3 deep looks, right? Middle field closed. So how does that compare to the Packers? We ran cover 3 32% of the time this season. So you're going to see a little bit less cover 3, right? If Christian Parker carries over exactly what he did there. The second most defense ran was cover 1 man. You guys know I'm not a big cover 1 man fan, 22%. Now, Green Bay only ran it 15% of the time this year. However, when you look at the stats throughout the wild card round, in the wild card round against the Bears, I think we played man coverage 25% of the time, if I've seen that stat right. You guys do your own research. I've seen that come up on the Twitter timeline. I was like, damn, ain't no wonder they collapsed in the second half. We were playing so much man. So, again, 22% man was the second call that they made. Cover 1 man, that is. And cover 1, man coverage across the board, 1 deep post safety. Okay. Middle field closed, same as cover 3, man coverage underneath with a 4-man rush. Cover 1 man you can also fire a blitz there and it be cover 1 man like a green dog, where if the running back's staying in, okay, if that's your man, go ahead and blitz unless he leaks off into the route. He's still your responsibility. All right. So the 3rd most defense they ran in terms of coverage, cover 6, 21% of the snaps. Guys, notice they ran cover 6 more than anybody else in the league other than Jacksonville. Timeout. Jacksonville. Anthony Campanelli, our linebacker coach last year. What did we run the majority of the time last year? We talked about it, right? Maybe not the majority, but we ran a more healthier approach to cover 6 last year. That was the bread and butter of the Jeff Hafley defense. We kind of got away from it this year, I believe. Packers, 16% cover 6 defense. So I'm going to tell you what this tells me. When Matt LaFleur is looking to make a slight adjustment, I think we'd all agree, we wish the defense had been better, especially down the stretch and give up a lot of points. Looks like Matt might be wanting to dip back into cover 6. I love it. Now, cover 6, Clayton, is that zone. You can run a cover 6 spot drop, but I'm talking about 90% of the time when you play cover 6, it's zone match. What does that mean? Quarters match principles. Fangio, the root of Fangio's scheme, principles but you're in a cover 6. What's a cover 6? A cover 4 is exactly what it sounds like. 4 deep defenders, okay? 4 deep, all with quarter responsibility. Their responsibility is a quarter of the field, okay? So deep quarter, middle quarter, deep outside quarter, okay? Cover 6 is what we some people will call it a 2x4. Some people will call it cover 6, right? Some people will call it quarter halves or half quarter. All right. What it means is half of the field is cover 2. The other half is cover 4. 2 plus 4 equals 6. That's why they call it a cover 6 defense. So what you'll do with the cover 6 typically is the strong side of the formation. If you're in a trips or a tray set, you'll play the quarters to that side and the half to the other. Why? Because you want to make sure if they've got 3 defenders, you've got the box technique that Saban talks about, right? And again, you can play poach, you can play buzz, you can play a lot of different versions of a cover 4 match, or in this case, a cover 6, but that's just kind of at the root of the defense. Again, cover 6 is what they ran the majority of the time, not the majority of the time. They ran it third most this year in Philadelphia, but it was tied for the most in the league. Now, Campanile went down to Jacksonville and they had great success, right? I mean, you look at their EPA per drop back, they're just behind the Philadelphia Eagles. So Campanile continued to run cover 6 in Jacksonville. And for whatever reason, Jeff Hafley got away from cover 6 a little bit and played a little bit more cover 3 at 32%. You see what I'm saying? So you went down to 16% cover 6. Let me double check something real quick. I just want to make sure, see how much cover 6 we ran. You can see last year our EPA was actually minus 0.02. It's showing we only ran 12% cover 6 last year, which is really, really interesting. But we played way more cover 2. Cover 6 is way closer to cover 2 than cover 3. Obviously, with a cover 2 defense, what we like to run was a Tampa 2 modification. We'd also run a lot of what we call invert 2, where instead of having the safeties cover deep half, you would have a cornerback drop and cover half with a safety buzz the box and play the underneath zone. And on the other side, you would have your traditional safety playing deep half. So last year, it seems like the Packers played a little more. Way more cover 2. Or we played way more cover 2 last year than we did this year, because what we're showing here is the Packers only played cover 2 18% of the time this year. So really, we got into cover 3 a little too much, and in my opinion, went down the stretch. You got into too much man. Obviously, the numbers aren't going to reflect here from the playoffs. That's how you got cooked against Chicago. So what can we expect schematically from Christian Parker, right? What can we expect from Christian Parker? Probably going to see a lot more cover 6, and I love it because McKinney is built for cover 6. Now, you've got athletic linebackers where you could cover the seam if you want to dip into Tampa 2. The Eagles played cover 2 defense, though, only 3% of the time this year. So you're going to see way less cover 2, and you're going to see way more cover 6 if, indeed, Christian Parker, and I imagine he would because he was the passing game coordinator, brings that same mentality, that same mindset to Green Bay. It's interesting, too, the thing to keep an eye on if he does get this job. And again, we're not saying he's a slam dunk to get this job. It's just a name that gets brought up again, and he's the first interview they called for. Very interesting, right? I don't think that's a coincidence. If you go with Christian Parker this year and they decide, all right, he's our defensive coordinator, the thing I want to watch the most is who really shined in Philadelphia the last 2 years. Cooper DeJean, right, the rookie, nickelback. Who's our nickelback? Javon Bullard. I would not be surprised. As a matter of fact, I'd be just about willing to put a little money on some kind of unique wager that Javon Bullard, if Christian Parker comes to the Packers and the way they play cover 6, the way Cooper DeJean has kind of excelled in that nickelback role. Obviously, he plays cornerback, and I think he played a little bit of safety too when they're in their base sets. But wouldn't be surprised if you see Javon Bullard take a spike, a little jump, kind of how Cooper DeJean has played really, really well at the league. So I look for commonalities like that when you're switching DCs, when you're switching and bringing in new guys. Again, I want to, as we wrap this up, I'm not saying that Christian Parker is going to be your next DC. There's going to be somebody say, hey, you never hire him, never hire him. That's cool. If that's how you feel, that's awesome. What we're going to do is every interview that we hear, we're going to try to find the time to do these breakdowns to give you an idea of who's going to be stepping in, who you would potentially be getting. That way we can have a conversation about it as Packer fans along the way, and whether or not you like Christian Parker. So if you're watching this video back later, let me know in the comments, how do you feel about Christian Parker? Is that the guy you want as your DC? Is there somebody else you would like more? Where would he rank? Is he your top choice? Is he top 3, top 5? Maybe he's not even in your top 10. Let us know in the comments what you think about Christian Parker. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you know when we go live here in the future. All right, guys, I'm going to turn this heater off real quick, and then we're going to dive into some Aaron Banks talk. Bear with me just a second. I am cooking over here. Give me just a second. All right. We woke up down here at about 11 degrees this morning, so we got the heat rolling. Boy, it is working, let me tell you. All right, next topic. First of all, everybody in the comments, let me know right now, where would you rank? I need one, I guess it'd be 2-word answers. Real rapid fashion. Chris Ian's already on it. You know what I'm asking for here. Where would you put Parker in your ranking? Top 3, top 5, top 10? Here's what Chris says in here, okay? Chris says Leonard number 1. So he still likes Jim Leonard as number 1. Christian Parker, the number 2 choice. Got it, man. Got it. And you know what? I would be okay with either of those guys. I'm really, really intrigued by Leonard. Now, here's the thing, Chris. Here's the negative to Jim Leonard. We haven't seen him as a DC, right? We've seen him as a passing game coordinator. We haven't seen Christian Parker as a DC either. So it's like that's the only thing that makes me a little hesitant on these guys. But I feel like Christian Parker, and I could be wrong, I feel like he's had a little bit more success than Jim Leonard. And I think the thing I want to say here is Christian Parker, if we're going to base this off of how Pat Surtain played, or not base it off of, but if it's going to have a role in it, I think it's safe to say that Pat Surtain was playing great before Jim Leonard. Jim Leonard got him to, obviously player of the year status, but Christian Parker had him playing good too. Christian Parker has ties to 2 great DBs that he's worked with, Jair Alexander and Pat Surtain, right? And now he moves to Philadelphia, and that secondary played really, really good this year. So he's kind of had success at 3 different stops in the NFL. You see what I'm saying? With Jim Leonard, it's only 1 stop. But granted, that's the only opportunity he's had. So who's to say he wouldn't be better? I don't disagree with it, man. I'd be okay with Leonard for sure. Let's see where everybody else has it. J. Cole says top 4. Got it, Jay. So he's in your top 5. Love it, man. Broke into the top 5. So there you go. Let's see here. Carney in the chat says give Morris an interview. I think he will get interviewed, Carney, talking about Raheem Morris. I really, really do. And as soon as that interview is mentioned, scheduled, whatever, you know what? Maybe Matt don't even need to interview him too, right? Maybe Matt knows what he's got there. They've known each other for years. Raheem's been a former head coach. I love the head coaching experience there. And you can kind of see where these guys have tiers. They have levels where it's like, okay, you actually have head coaching experience from Raheem Morris and defensive coordinator experience, as where someone like Christian Parker and Jim Leonard don't have either of that experience, right? So going to be really, really interesting to kind of see how everything unfolds there. Philip in the chat says Al Harris 1, Leonard 2, Parker 3. So that's his top 3. Appreciate the info there, Philip. Thank you for your opinion. And let's go ahead and move along. Well, actually, one last one. Chester Marco says Parker is my first choice as the greatest sax player of all time. I don't get the joke there. Maybe he actually plays. Does he actually play the sax? Is there a former saxophone player named Christian Parker that I don't know about? If it ain't a banjo down here in Kentucky, Tennessee, I don't know much about it. You know what I mean? All right, let's move along to some Aaron Banks talk. What do y'all think? Y'all okay with that? Let's continue our little series here. You guys can find this over in Patreon, our Patreon group. We put all this information, we compile everything together, have it in a very, very convenient format for you guys. You'll find everybody that we've covered here. We just got through breaking down Elton Jenkins on whether or not we should bring him back and at what cap number. Before that, we had Rashawn Gary. Just to give you a quick little review, we give you kind of key statistics, what he's worth. Like if you cut him outright this year, you free up $11 million pre June 1. If you go post June 1 cut, you can actually free up $19.5 million. With Elton Jenkins, the number was $20 million. It's the last year of his deal, so there's obviously no post June 1 cut. So you cut him, you free up $20 million is what you can get in cap space. And now we're going to move on to Aaron Banks. We just had a conversation about all those guys. So let's dive into Aaron Banks here and talk about what he brings to the table and whether or not we should sign him back. And I bet everybody in the chat's already saying, nope, don't want him. Don't want him, right? And listen, I understand it. It was a bad look this year. Goody nailed free agency last year. Like, obviously Josh Jacobs, Xavier McKinney, those free agent signings, he crushed them, right? Boy, this year, Aaron Banks and Nate Hobbs, if we decide to keep them, man, I hope they blow up, guys. I really hope they have a great year. I don't want you guys to take this as I'm rooting against them so Goody can be wrong. No. I want Goody to be 100% right on every one of his decisions, right? I want the Packers to field the best team. But based off what we've seen with Aaron Banks last year, it was an ugly look, and I'll explain everything now. So his cap hit this year is $24.8 million, okay? If you cut him pre-June 1, you can free up $4.5 million. I'm kind of to the point where, is he starting caliber? He didn't play like it last year, to be honest. In my opinion, he didn't. Is he someone that you would pay $10 million cap hit for to play? No, he's not. So when you ask those questions at 24.8, I think it's pretty straightforward. I do not want him. The way he played last year, in my opinion, it's not worth $10 million. So that answers the question, right? Now, if you cut him this year pre-June 1, $4.5 million is all you're freeing up. So it's not like you're getting a huge chunk of change. However, if you designate him post-June 1 cut, like we did Zadarius Smith when we moved on from him, if you'll remember, $18 million is what you're freeing up. So if you decide the offensive line was not good enough and you're going to move on from Elton Jenkins and Aaron Banks, and you just cut Elton Jenkins outright, $20 million, and then you go post-June 1 for Aaron Banks, you're freeing up $38 million. $38 million. Okay, to go and to go and kind of revamp your offensive line. Now, what would it take to go get 2 solid offensive linemen? Can you do that with over $30 million in cap space? I feel comfortable saying you could. Now, again, especially if you could find someone that you could structure in a way that you did Aaron Banks, is when we broke the Aaron Banks news here, and we didn't break the news, but we covered the breaking news of Aaron Banks signing with the Green Bay Packers, okay? When that happened, the first thing we did was, we got to see the structure of the contract. Everybody was freaking out going, why did they give this guy a 4-year, $77 million deal? That's what's being reported from the agents. They're going to show the big number. And again, as soon as the contract details dropped, I went live, told the details of the contract. I said, guys, this is a very, very, very safe signing, if you will. Everyone's talking about $77 million. That $77 million doesn't mean a rat's ass. Like, you got to get that number out of your head. What you got to look at is the guaranteed money and the cap allocation. Okay. Again, the cash, the guaranteed money, that's the money you're actually on the hook for. The allocation is the accounting of the entire contract. So the way they set it up was, I said, this is actually typically Goody. If he signs a 4-year deal with somebody, it's usually a 4 that's really a 3. A 3-year deal is really a 3 that's really a 2, right? In this case, it was a 4 that's actually a 1. And let me explain what that means. And you show here on Spot Track the potential outs in 2026, right? So his cap hit last year was $9 million. What did I just say? Would I be willing to pay him $10 million against the cap this year? Nope. Wouldn't be willing to do it, right? They didn't even pay it last year. So again, the first year of these deals are typically low cap allocation, and it's because they moved the larger cap out a little bit. And here's how this works. This year, his cap hit being $24.8 million, the dead cap attached is 20.2. Some cases it's being said 20.4. Again, I try to get things within a couple of $1 million, and I'm good with that. I ain't sweating that, okay? So that's how it was set up to get the potential out after 2025. So Goody went in. I think the way Goody approached this contract was, and listen, regardless of if whether or not you gave yourself a backdoor to exit, which is what he did here in 2020 after the 2025 season, it doesn't mean it was a good signing, a safe signing. It's just, we'll give it a shot. We came out of that Philadelphia Eagles playoff loss after getting our asses kicked in the trenches, and we came out and said, "But this guy might be good. Let's give a 1 plus a 3 here." And that's what we did. And what result did we get this year? We got horrible offensive line play, and specifically from Aaron Banks. So, again, that's how it's structured. And if you look ahead, let's say you decide to keep him at 24.8. I don't think they'll keep him at that number. They'll either reduce that cap number or they'll move on from Aaron Banks. Okay. But let's say you do that, right? And you keep him at 24.8, and then you move on next year. Well, next year is 22.2 million against the cap and 13.5 dead cap. So you can actually free up significantly more money in that regard. But again, the post June 1 cut, according to Over the Cap's website, is, like we said just a second ago, you could free up $4.5 million pre-June 1, post-June 1, $18 million. So if it's me and I've got the reins and I'm making the decision, I'm moving on from Aaron Banks. I'm going post-June 1 cut, freeing up $18 million and moving forward trying to fix this freaking offensive line. Now, here's the problem with moving on from both Elgton Jenkins and Aaron Banks. What has Clayton's main complaint been all year long? I know you guys know it. We cannot continue to go out there and field the youngest roster in the league. We can't keep doing this. This is 3 years in a row, and there's conflicting reports. I've done the research, and one report that AI filled out for me says the Seattle Seahawks are the only team in NFL history to win the Super Bowl with the youngest roster in the league. Now, another report said, no, technically they weren't the youngest. It's never been done. So you guys do your own research and come up with what you want there. But the reality is, let's say that the Seahawks were the youngest team in the league the year that they won one of their Super Bowls. Okay, let's say that's the case, right? Since the merger and the Super Bowl in 1967, okay, so 67 to 2025. I mean, math's hard for us Kentucky guys here. Let me do the math here. Let's see how many years that actually is. Like, how many years have we been playing the Super? Let's just go 2025 so we don't over-embellish, minus 1967. So 58 years in the history of the Super Bowl. For 58 years, there's only been one team that fielded the youngest roster and won the Super Bowl. I don't like those odds, guys. So that's been my argument all year, is like, we've got to add veterans. Well, you're cutting 2 veterans if you move on from Elgton Jenkins and Aaron Banks. When I say I want to move on from those guys, here's what I mean. I mean move on from those guys and replace them with veterans. I don't mean move on from those guys and replace them with a 2nd-round pick and a 5th-round pick, because you're going to go out there with another inexperienced offensive line and you're going to get your teeth bashed in the trenches. It's going to happen. So I want to be very clear in that. Let's talk about how Aaron Banks performed before we wrap up. PFF grade said he was the 56th ranked guard. Now, keep in mind, there's 2 guards starting on every team. So that's in the top 64 would suggest your starting caliber. Okay. So he was a starting caliber guard according to PFF grade standards. All right. But still, $24.8 million against the cap this year for the 56th ranked at his position. No. You're overpaying for above average, essentially. And what's crazy is I don't think that 55.6 is above average. It might actually be average. But from a ranking standpoint, you're paying $24.8 million for above average. Let's just call it that. That is the epitome. You're overpaying for above average. We say we don't overpay for good. You're willing to overpay for great. You never overpay for good, right? This is a no-brainer. Unless he's going to take a huge pay cut, I think you got to move on from Aaron Banks. Now, I don't know how to say this in a nice way. There's been a track record with Brian Gutekunst believing in and keeping players that all the warning signs are flashing. This is not a good football player. Let me give you an example. Darnell Savage. You drafted him in the 1st round. He never lived up to 1st-round status. Then you hit him with the 5th-year option, which I think was, I want to say it was $8 million fully guaranteed. Regardless, you said, you know what? We haven't had enough. Let's bring him back for a 5th season. Guys, that's tough. That's a tough look, man. He has a track record of doing this, especially with his draft picks. So I would not be surprised. I'm trying to say this in a tactful way. I would not be surprised if they keep Aaron Banks. They do some kind of contract restructure and they keep him. Now, if Goody moves on from Aaron Banks, then we got to tip our cap and applaud. He's changing. He's evolving moving forward. Because, again, you just can't have someone ranked 56th at their position and $24.8 million against the cap. It's just wild. Let's talk about PFF efficiency. Again, that's a pass blocking efficiency grade. So it's their signature stat measuring pressures allowed on a per snap basis with weighting towards sacks allowed. Okay. Where did he rank? 70th amongst all guards with a 96.6 efficiency grade. You see 96.6 and think that's a good efficiency grade. It's kind of like the Caleb Williams stuff that came out yesterday. His adjusted completion percentage is actually 69%. So he's actually, would be completing 69% of his passes when you remove all the noise. Okay, you're just going to conveniently not mention that that's ranked 41st in the league? What are we doing? So again, yes, it's a 96.6 efficiency grade, but where does it rank at his position? Aaron Banks is 70th. Not going to get it done. Not going to get it. You can see that's not even starting 64 caliber, right? That's out. That's saying that is a backup guard at best, according to the efficiency grade. Run blocking, one of his weak spots. He was 68th in PFF run blocking grade, right, at a 56.3. What was our big problem on offense this year, guys? We could not run the rock. We could not move the ball in the trenches, right, in the running game. We could not move the ball. Aaron Banks was a big part of that. Elton Jenkins, the year before at guard, right, a little bit easier to run the rock. You move Elton Jenkins to center. Aaron Banks comes in and replaces him at left guard, and it didn't work. I was excited about the Aaron Banks signing because Goody had a lot of success, in my opinion, at evaluating offensive line. When he went and drafted Zach Tom in the 4th round, home run pick, right? Rasheed Walker in the 7th round, I wouldn't keep Rasheed Walker at the market value of $20 million per. I don't think he's worth that. I think that's overpaying for good. Maybe not even good, maybe above average. I would say good. That would be overpaying for good as opposed to overpaying for great. So I don't want him back. But still, the fact that you got significant starts out of Rasheed Walker, albeit you've seen the penalties down the stretch, the mistakes he made down the stretch, the blown blocks he made down the stretch. He was a 7th round pick. So I looked at Rasheed Walker in the 7th, Zach Tom in the 4th, and said, Goody knows how to evaluate offensive linemen. That's why when he signed Aaron Banks, I looked at the analytics and went, what are we doing? And I had to take a step back and go, I don't know more than an NFL GM. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know that, right? So I got to check my ego at the door and go, okay, I'm going to trust Goody here because he found Zach Tom. He found Rasheed Walker. Well, our gut was right initially. Everyone who was looking at this going, what are we doing? It's kind of like with Anthony Belton, okay? This wasn't the only offensive line miss so far, okay, with Aaron Banks. You guys remember when we drafted Anthony Belton, we were live in Green Bay doing our draft show, all right? And we pointed out, where is he? Where is Anthony Belton? We had Anthony Belton on our board. He was lit up gold saying these are Goody's tops right here. But we had a 109.0 grade on him. So low number wins. What that 109 suggests, the way our draft board is built, is he's somewhere around the 109th pick is where we have his value. It doesn't mean that he wouldn't be valued at 90. It's just kind of very, very vaguely speaking in how we do our grading system with our draft board, probably looking to get him around the 100 to the 110 mark. Well, we took Anthony Belton in the 2nd round. Our initial reaction was with Anthony Belton, that's a reach, right? But what did I remember Jacob going, what the hell are we doing live on the stream, right? And I said, Jacob, man, and I don't know if I told him then or off the show or what, but I do specifically remember saying, maybe we need to trust Goody here, man. He knows how to evaluate offensive linemen. He swung and missed on Morgan, and it's on Banks, but it's early. It's early, but it looks like he swung and missed on Anthony Belton. And I know people say, oh, you can't grade a draft in the first year. I completely agree. I'm not saying cut Anthony Belton, but this idea that Anthony Belton played good football this year is just wrong. Anthony Belton graded out in the 40s, right? When you watch the tape, when I ask people, what did you like about Anthony Belton, right? He looked bad when he played tackle. He looked better when he played guard. But what did you like about Anthony Belton? Well, he's a baller. Okay, cool. So our run game, how's it doing? Oh, it's cheeks. If he's so damn good, why didn't the run game get better when we brought him in? Why did the run game get worse? He's playing right guard. Now, the thing that people overlooked, I think that when you had to move to Sean Ryan at center because Elton Jenkins goes down, and now all of a sudden Anthony Belton, whether it was the next game or a few games after, Anthony Belton starts getting some snaps at guard. You see the run game improve a little bit. Immediately people went to, well, the run game got better when Anthony Belton played guard. Actually, in my opinion, the run game got better when Sean Ryan was playing center. Now, the problem is Sean Ryan pass blocking was real bad. So you see the strength in the run blocking, but now his pass blocking gets a little bit worse. Elton Jenkins is a significantly better center than Sean Ryan. However, Sean Ryan played really good in the run game, in my opinion, run blocking. But that's what Sean Ryan does. He's a mauling guard that they put at center. So he got to pick on some guys in the run game, right? So again, I'm not saying Anthony Belton should be cut. I'm not saying Anthony Belton's a bust. I'm simply saying we were praising Brian Gutekunst because we said we needed help on the offensive line. And what did he do? He went out. We were praising him because we were saying we got to do something. We got killed in the trenches, right? We need to bolster this offensive line. He went into free agency. He overpaid for Aaron Banks, and he reached on Anthony Belton as it sits right now, according to our board. And again, it's not everything. We could be wrong. I'm not trying to say I know more than Goody, but all the information we have, PFF grades, our draft board that's comprised of the draft experts that we trust and how they look at prospects, that's where the ranking comes in. It's not our personal opinion on how we felt about Anthony Belton. It's how does Dane Brugler feel about him? How does Greg Cosell feel about him? How does the consensus big board feel about him? How did PFF feel about him? That's where he fell into the 109 spot. Not 109 ranking, but the 109 grade. So again, he may end up being a great offensive lineman, but the two picks that Goody made, Anthony Belton and Aaron Banks, year one, not good. We praised him for Rasheed Walker and Zach Tom. If you see it, you got to say it. You got to criticize him for the negatives as well. Now, potential draft replacements this year. I'm not going to read all these names off. We've talked about them already. I mentioned Jake Slaughter as a potential center replacement. He's a top 100 prospect at 87. Connor Lew, I need to do a little more research on him. I picked him just in a random mock draft last night. He was available when we picked in the second round. I took him. And there were people on X going, what a horrible pick. And Lew, Consensus Big Board has Connor Lew at 57. There were other people saying he tore his ACL. Guys, I didn't do a random mock draft in my free time last night and dig into people's injury history. I'm sorry, right? I wasn't on there going, here's the draft class we need. I was just like, let me do a quick little mock draft, throw it out there and let everybody know, hey, it's that season, right? So we'd have to do research into all these guys. The board's going to come alive in about 48 hours. The board is really going to come alive. We're going to have the 2025 PFF grades, the PFF Big Board ranking, and the Consensus Big Board rankings go in. And then we're going to be set and ready for the college all-star games and all that. So, with that being said, that's a couple of names that come to mind for me. Like if Emmanuel Pregnon, if I'm saying that right, interior offensive lineman for Oregon, if he were to fall in the second round, maybe that's somebody you can pick up. Now, it looks like the early mocks have him going number 28 to Houston, so he probably won't make it out of the first round, at least early in this with this information. But those are two guys that kind of come to mind for me. And Chase Basantis, interior offensive line for Texas A&M. Now, on our draft board, the other thing, and again, you guys will have access to this. Let me throw it up on the screen. If you guys want to join our Patreon group, patreon.com/PackerFan Total Access, you'll have access to our draft board as we update it. On the draft board, when we determine this guy's got significant center experience, he'll be lit up light blue. So you'll know when you look at the board, you'll see some guys in green, some guys in blue, and everybody else in white. And what that means is the green means tier one position of importance. On offense, tackles, quarterback. And then on defense, edge, 3-tech. And most of the time, we'll just group the defensive tackles in there too if they've got any experience at 3-tech because they play a lot of nickel. A lot of teams play a lot of nickel, 2-4-5 and 3-3-5 cub at the college football level. So you'll get those guys lit up in green. In the blue are tier two positions of importance. On offense, center, defense, stack backer, post safety. Okay. So that's you'll be able to look at the board and go, okay, let's sort by interior offensive lineman. Oh, here's the guys lit up in blue. Those are your center prospects. So we'll explain all that in the Patreon group. Again, $3 gets you access to everything at Patreon. It's just the best way to support what we do here at PTA. And you'll get access to all the chats. You'll get access to the draft board, the article, everything that we just put together, all this information that I compiled and kind of gave my opinion on, you can find it in there. You get first dibs on all of that. So with that being said, if you guys are watching this video back later, let us know in the comments, how do you feel about Aaron Banks? Do you want him back? If you want him back, at what number? What would we need to get that cap number down to? What kind of pay cut would he have to take in order to justify keeping Aaron Banks on this offensive line? Or do we got to bite the bullet and get young again? I hate I hate both options, but that's kind of where we're at. This was a swing and a miss, and it kind of put us behind the eight ball a little bit. Again, in my opinion, I think you cut both of them, and then let Elton test the market. If he comes back and nobody offers him 10 million, I'd be willing to give him 10 or 15 million for 1 year, right? And give a big guarantee, bring him back and let him play guard or center, and then adjust, go get another free agent. You got to shore up that offensive line, though. So let us know in the comments how you feel about that. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, click the bell icon so you don't miss out on broadcasts here in the future. Let's get to a super chat and we'll wrap this up. Mike Witt with the super chat. Thank you so much, buddy. He says, I still think Belton will be good, needs to work on his technique, but I will say this, Rasheed Walker played worse, in my opinion, this year than Belton did, especially in the playoff game. PFF disagrees, Mike, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Sheed played bad, man. He played like a guy that wants out. He played like a guy that wants to, not that he would perform bad on purpose, because obviously he wants a contract. He just didn't seem like he was, I don't know. I don't know what happened with Sheed. He's one of those rare people that he surprised us. I think it was his second year that he started, either second or third year. He surprised us like, dang, this guy's going to be a good football player. And I felt like he played solid football. He's a good pass blocker, not a very good run blocker. But I felt like, yeah, he's going to be good and he's only going to get better. He never got better. If anything, this year he kind of took a step back. So now with that being said, people value pass blocking so much in the National Football League. I think he'll hit the open market and he'll probably get a good chunk of change. Will it be the 20 million mark? I don't know. The number I would have on Sheed in order to bring him back, probably 10 million average annual value I would be okay with, but the guarantee would be low that we could get out of it, kind of like an Aaron Banks deal, to be honest with you. But, being able to get out of it quick, way less guarantee. When I say Aaron Banks, I'm not saying $77 million. I'm saying like something to the tune of, 3 years, $30 million with, let's say, 10 million guaranteed. That way, after year one, you can get out of it. And it was essentially a 1 year, $10 million deal. If he plays good, you got him under contract the next 2 years. You can start to maneuver and massage the salary cap a little bit. But I agree with what you said. I think Belton can be good too. I mean, he's got the stature. And here's the problem too that we got to take into consideration. Goody has, he's always drafted, and this goes back to Ted Thompson's days too. They always draft players and then have the coaches change their position. This is kind of a Green Bay thing. We've seen them draft cornerbacks and try to move them to safety. We've seen them draft safeties and try to move them to corner. We've seen them draft, big defensive linemen and try to move them to edge. We've seen them, in this case, draft tackle after tackle after tackle and make them play guard, right? That's not a Matt LaFleur thing. That wasn't a Mike McCarthy thing. That's a front office thing. Like, hey, we like to draft tackles and move them to guard. That's just something they like to do. Hell, even Elton Jenkins was a center in college. They drafted a center and moved him to guard, right? It's just something they do in Green Bay, it seems like. So I say that because Anthony Belton was a left tackle. They drafted at NC State, and we moved him to the right side. He never seen anything on the left side, and then he ended up settling in at guard at the end of the season. So he's like bounced around. Same thing with Jordan Morgan. Left tackle his entire life through high school and college. You draft him, you make him play right guard. It's like, what are we doing, right? And then when you see Jordan Morgan at left tackle, his PFF grade at left tackle was in the 70s. At guard, it was in the 50s. So I think that the writing's on the wall for Sheed. He's going to walk in free agency, and Jordan Morgan's going to be your left tackle, I believe. I think that's how that's going to work. So you move him to left tackle. You don't have to resign Rasheed Walker, okay? You got Zach Tom at right tackle, all right? Right guard, they're probably going to move forward with Anthony Belton. I hope he takes a huge step. If you move on from Aaron Banks and Elton Jenkins, now what you got to do is go find you a starting center and try to find you a starting left guard. And I think you could accomplish both of those things in free agency if you open up the checkbook a little bit. And I think it's that important. That was our biggest flaw on offense this year. Everyone agrees. Offense, the weak spot was the offensive line. Fix it. On defense, what's the weak spot? Cornerback, yes. I'm still keeping an eye on 3-tech. If there's a dominant 3-tech that falls in our lap in free agency, go sign his ass. Although they've kind of made their mind up that Devontae Wyatt is the guy. I don't think Devontae Wyatt's a bad football player. I think he's a good football player. But if they just go ahead and make their decision that Devontae Wyatt is a 3-tech of the future, then you're agreeing to overpay for good, not overpay for great. That's why keep swinging at that 3-tech. You got your edge defender in Micah Parsons moving forward, okay? It'd be awesome to have two like Denver does. Not that they have two Micahs, but they got two solid edge rushers, right? Micah, okay, check edge off. You're good there. Doesn't mean you don't keep looking. It's an important position, but I would shift the focus to 3 tech and cornerback on defense. That would be my top needs: 3 tech and cornerback. And whether or not they bring Quay back will determine if you need a stack backer, unless you believe in Isaiah McDuffie. I personally like Isaiah McDuffie more than Quay. The only thing that suggests Quay Walker played better football than Isaiah McDuffie this year are the number of tackles. He's a tackling machine. But when you look at the stops don't match up to the tackles for Quay. Again, a stop is when you make the tackle and it results in a negative EPA for the offense, right? I don't care if you can make a tackle 12 yards down the field. I could give a rat's ass. Are you filling the hole? Are you a guy that's going to meet your run fit? Are you going to be aggressive underneath but not make your defense vulnerable over the top? All those things come into play. I think all things being equal, the defense actually played better with Isaiah McDuffie on the field as opposed to Quay Walker. That's just my personal opinion. And I'm probably in the minority with that. Again, that's just my opinion. I'm not saying I'm right and anybody else is wrong, but thank you for that, Mike. And Mike, one more super chat says, as for the DC, I want Flores. If we cannot get him, I want Raheem or Jimmy Leonard. Got it. I'd be okay with all three of those. Flores is a dream, right? It's going to be tough. He's probably going to get a head coaching job. Now, if he don't get a head coaching job, here's the thing. He's got his family in Minnesota. So what's it going to take to make it worth it to him to get him to pack up his family and move them out of Minnesota, reestablish them? I don't know if he's got young kids or not. I'm sure he does. Get them in a new school system, get the family moved down, all that. It's not impossible, but you're going to have to overpay for him. Will Green Bay be willing to overpay for Brian Flores if he doesn't get a head coaching job? You're going to have to outbid everyone plus some. Okay, you're going to have to outbid Minnesota plus some. So that's something else to kind of take into consideration with him. In terms of Raheem Morris, I think he's been a good defensive coordinator where he's gone. Obviously, he was a bad head coach. That doesn't mean he's a bad DC. And then Jim Leonard is kind of the unproven guy, right? So all three of those, I would go, I get it. I understand. Now, with that being said, we kind of felt like this in the last hiring cycle, and what ended up happening. They went out and found, who was it? They went out and I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of interviews for DC. And then all of a sudden, Jeff Hafley's announced as a defense coordinator. We're going, who? Who is this guy? Who is Jeff Hafley? Well, as much as people like to criticize Matt LaFleur, he crushed that defensive coordinator hire. And that was his decision. And it was announced. One of the things that kind of went under the radar with this contract extension with Matt LaFleur, it was confirmed through reporting behind the scenes that he will have complete 100% control over his staff. All right. Ed Policy, Brian Gutekunst, those guys have no say in Matt LaFleur's staff. We know if it's a good hire like Jeff Hafley, Matt LaFleur deserves credit. If it's a bad hire like Rich Bisaccia, Matt LaFleur deserves criticism. So it's on him in that regard. But whoever he picks, he handpicked Jeff Hafley, and he knocked it out of the freaking park. So I'm excited to see what this team can do next year with a healthy Micah Parsons, a healthy Edgerrin Cooper, a healthy Devontae Wyatt. Hopefully everybody can stay healthy. Bolster the cornerback room a little bit. Just keep looking for that dominant 3-tech. Your safeties are great. Your stack backers will be fine. Who knows? Maybe you could find another Edgerrin Cooper in the second round again this draft. I talked about taking a stack backer in the second round. People are like, what are you talking about? We don't need a linebacker. Okay, bub. Okay. Quay did not play good this year. Imagine. So you're telling me you're going to pass up on a Fred Warner if you can line him up with Edgerrin Cooper? And I know Fred Warners don't fall off trees, but great cornerbacks don't fall off trees either. You know, we essentially chose Edgerrin Cooper over Cooper DeJean. Both of them end up being great football players. Me personally, I would rather have a great stack backer than a great cornerback. To me, stack backer is a more important position. You're in the middle of that defense, and you can play your coverage, whether it's a cover 6 or a quarters match, to deter teams from throwing and abusing cornerbacks. So that's just kind of how I see that. Again, that's just my opinion. So, again, thank you for that super chat, Mike. Appreciate you guys. I got to get out of here. I plan on going about 30 minutes, and we're at hour 3. Appreciate everybody jumping in here on such short notice, doing a morning show. Just want to dive into the Christian Parker talk. If you just tuned in, like, hey, man, I seen your I seen your thumbnail. I want to hear about the DC information. It's at the front of the show. And then if you want to hear about the Aaron Banks contract information, obviously it's at the backside. So we'll go ahead and cut both of those up and make it more convenient for you guys, where you can just click on the video itself. they should be uploaded here in the next 30 minutes. So thanks everybody in here. If you want to support what we do here at PTA, go to patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access. Appreciate everybody jumping in. We'll be live if news breaks later today. We'll definitely go live one more time at some point throughout the day. So we'll see you guys there. Just make sure you hit subscribe, click the bell icon so you don't miss it. My name's Clayton. This is PTA. Go Pack Go.
Here we go.
Bye, guys.